OnTheGrid Podcast.
Hello and welcome to yet another episode of On the Grid Podcast. We're on episode 3 today. We obviously did a Saudi Arabian Grand Prix review last episode, but in this episode we're going to focus solely on the Australian Grand Prix, which is back for the first time since 2019. I'm your host, Adrian Kita, and I'm joined by my lovely co-host, Harvey Todd. Of course, the topic on hand is the Australian Grand Prix. We've obviously had many changes to the track. We've obviously had a few corners which have had changed radii. No longer the turn 9 and 10 chicane, which we're also going to discuss. We've got 4 DRS zones this weekend. Obviously, the return of Sebastian Vettel and much more. But let's discuss the first topic on hand, which is Alexander Albon getting a 3-place grid penalty for a collision with Lance Stroll at Saudi Arabia. It was obviously released by F1 that Alex will be enduring a 3-place grid penalty at Melbourne. Harvey Todd, your thoughts? I think, personally, I don't agree with it at all.
I would quote the late, great James Hunt, but it's a family-friendly show, so I'm going to say something else. I think it's a load of rubbish. That's my view on it. I think it's a load of rubbish.
The thing is, I somewhat understand the FIA on this one, but if it is down to my personal view, shouldn't technically both drivers get a penalty? Because it wasn't just Alex's fault. They both came together. One was on the inside, one was on the outside, and they kind of turned in on each other, both of them at the same time.
It's one of them. If you're going to give one of them a penalty, you've got to give both of them a penalty. Or the fairest thing in general is just to sort of just let it slide because neither driver finished.
Well, that is very true. I'm just having a look through the notes. It was Stroll that did finish. I think Stroll finished a lap down, but it was Albon that retired from the race. So it is kind of bamboozling in a sense why Albon got a penalty, but not Lance. But with that being said, Alex is going to have a 3-place grid penalty. But let's move on to a more light-hearted topic. The return of Sebastian Vettel. After 2 races out, Seb Vettel is back. Mick was obviously delighted to see his buddy back in the paddock ahead of the race, and they've obviously done their grid walks and looked at the track at the new layout, etc. But the return of Sebastian Vettel, Harvey, Seb is coming into a bit of a environment where Aston Martin aren't performing brilliantly. But with that being said, it's kind of a fresh start for him in Melbourne.
Yeah, I thought Nico Hülkenberg was really good in his standing races, but I think, let's be honest, I think we'll be able to see the real pace of the Aston when Seb's at the wheel. Lance, we've said this, he's not going to extract the most out of that car, whereas someone like Sebastian Vettel will come in and hopefully get it into the top 10. It's unlikely, even as wonderful as Seb is. I just don't think that car has got enough to get into the top 10, but I hope I'm wrong. But I think there will be a slight improvement.
Do you think maybe the brink of a top 10 is an achievable thing for Seb? Because like you said, I don't think Q3 is the most achievable for that Aston Martin, but do you think maybe 11th, 12th place in Melbourne is a more realistic goal for Vettel?
Yeah, I don't see why not. I mean, he did well there last year. He's obviously got the pedigree. He wants to be at the front. And I think it's been a little bit of a rude awakening for Aston these first couple of races, but they've not had their number 1 driver involved at all. So this weekend, like you say, is sort of the start of their season. It's a bit of a belated start, but better late than never, I say.
But moving on to the circuit now, obviously we've seen a bit of a change at Albert Park since we last raced in 2019. We've obviously got a change in radii to turn 1 to turn 6 and the penultimate corner. Also, no turn 9 and 10 chicane, that's been removed, obviously to allow more of a high-speed racing there. And also, we've obviously got 4 DRS zones, which I was extremely shocked. Harvey sent me an image. I think it was on the Sunday or the Monday. We're recording this on the Wednesday. He sent me an image of a circuit, and I looked at it and I was just like, "Yeah, what about the circuit? I don't see any change." And then he points out the 4 DRS zones, and I go, "No way! Why is there 4 DRS zones when DRS is extremely overpowered?" We saw it in the first 2 races that you can get moves done down the start finish straight before the corner. Why If we got 4 DRS zones at Albert Park, Harvey, is it going to bring more excitement? Possibly. A lot more defending for the likes of Charles Leclerc and Max Verstappen potentially. But do you think it's going to allow better racing in a sense?
Yeah, like you say, the DRS overtakes have been done pretty much halfway down the straight. And I mean, there's only 2 detection points as well. That's just as you come into the right, left, long right, as you go up the top, as you come out of sector 1, and there's the one as you come into the stadium section at the end before the left-hand hairpin. So it seems to be, what I'd predict is it'd be one move gets done halfway down the straight, along the main straight, let's say, the lad who gets overtaken back ahead at turn 3. I think that's how it'll go. I think it'll be a good race. But my worry is it, how do I say it? It's sort of like less is more, and DRS being so OP this year, I'm not sure. It's not. I want to see some overtakes on some corners rather than halfway down the straight. That's what I'm basically trying to say.
With that being said, do you think the current new circuit layout is better than the old one? I know you're not a massive fan of a turn 9-10 chicane, but do you think the removal of that chicane and the circuit being more high speed is going to be better for fan experience?
Ask me next week. We've not seen a lap in anger there at all, but just basing off what I've driven on various racing sims, that turn 9-10 chicane is horrific. So to see it getting axed and being able to cut it with no penalty and flatline it, that'd be quite nice. I think there was a couple of awkward corners that needed opening out a little bit, and I think hopefully they've done the right corners that just makes the track a bit more flowing, because it was it's a nice track. It has potential to flow, but at some points it was a bit Mickey Mouse, if that makes sense.
Well, I hope that makes sense to our listeners. Obviously, they have to pick your brain every single week whilst they listen to this. So hopefully they do understand what you're getting at there. With that being said, let's look back at a bit of history. I know you've kind of delved into a bit of history, Harvey, before we start recording this podcast. Obviously, we're back at Albert Park for the first time since 2019. Have you got a lovely little poem for us?
I wouldn't say it's a poem. It's more of just some random bullet points.
Oh, that's brilliant.
We sort of wind the clock back just over 3 years to see what life was like on the 17th of March 2019. So Ariana Grande was top of the UK charts with 7 rings. I've never listened to that, but Google said it was top, so I've gone off that. TikTok had recently taken over from Musical.ly, and there's a cheeky little plug here. You can follow our TikTok at OnTheGrid Podcast. See what I did there? More about the F1. Daniel Ricciardo was about to take part in his first race at Renault. Meanwhile, further up the pit lane, Charles Leclerc was making his Ferrari debut. Lando Norris, George Russell, and Alex Albon were making their debuts. Yuki Tsunoda was about to take part in Formula 3 in 2019. Lewis Hamilton was a 5-time world champion. Valtteri Bottas announced his race-winning formula, porridge. Brexit still hadn't been delivered, as Theresa May was still the UK Prime Minister, and I was a squeaky 15-year-old about to sit my GCSEs. There's a little time capsule. If you want one for, what track's returning soon? Suzuka? Should we do one for Suzuka? I'm more than happy to do one for Suzuka if anyone cares. There we go.
That was fantastic. That's actually made my day. Harvey being a squeaky 15-year-old before his GCSEs, my personal highlight. But March 2019, what was I doing? I'm trying to think. I was 17 at the time, so I probably was revising for my A levels, if memory serves me right. But yeah, I was a little. I'm still the same height. I've not grown. I'm not grown a lot. I'm only an average male height wise.
But height wise for me, I've probably gone from like Yuki Tsunoda to who's relatively tall. George is quite tall. So
George is like 6 foot though.
I'm 5'11". Yeah, basically round it up. It's 6 foot.
Yeah. Okay. We'll go with it. But with that being said, let's look at the racing that happened in 2019. So on pole position, it was Lewis Hamilton. He couldn't deliver a race win in the first race of 2019. It was Valtteri Bottas, like Harvey said, he discovered his race winning formula of porridge, and we also heard that famous phrase, which I'm not going to repeat, but anybody who would like to listen to that can listen to the 2019 Australian Grand Prix highlights on YouTube, for example. But a plug to our YouTube channel, On The Grid Podcast, is there for you to listen to all of these podcast episodes, and our shorts are on there as well.
We're on the topic of social media. Was that the first weekend of a topless George Russell picture on Instagram? You can follow us on Instagram as well at On The Grid Pod.
Yeah, we plugged the social media, but with that being said, Lewis Hamilton didn't deliver his pole position lap. He finished second, with Valtteri Bottas winning that race and Max Verstappen finishing in third. With that being said, Valtteri Bottas' fastest lap was a 1:25.508, with Lewis Hamilton's pole position lap a 1:20.486. It wasn't I don't think it was near enough Michael Schumacher's fastest lap at Albert Park. But with that being said, Harvey, 2019 race was a good one. Can the 2022 race, with some changes to the track, deliver yet another good race at Albert Park?
Yes, I think it will be a very good race. I just hope it's a good race. Not so much for entertainment, but I just want the early get-up to be worth it, to be quite honest. That's all I'm interested in. Is it worth getting up at 6 a.m? And if it's an absolute thriller, it'll be worth it. If it's a bore fest, then all I'll say is I'll be asleep by the halfway point.
Like me and Harvey like to say whenever one of our football teams lose, bed. If it's a buff fest, it'd be just us two just sending messages back and forth to each other going bed, because the early get up for us is 5-6 a.m. Because Australia is on the other side of the world, and we've got to get up in the UK to watch it early. But if it's a fantastic race, then I am more than happy to get up early just to watch it. But if it's a bore fest, bed. That's all I'm going to say. But finally, let's move on to our predictions ahead of the Australian Grand Prix. That's the qualifying and the race. I'm going to go first, and I'm going to go. I don't think bold is the right word. I think it's pretty routine what's going to happen if this race follows on from the first two races of the season. So I've gone with qualifying: Leclerc P1, Verstappen P2, Sainz P3, Perez P4, and I've gone with Lewis Hamilton P5. I know George Russell got the better of the Mercedes car in Saudi Arabia, but I think Lewis Hamilton will be looking for a bit of vengeance at Albert Park. So, Harvey, hit us with your predictions for qualifying at Albert Park.
On pole position will be Charles Leclerc. Second place, Verstappen. On the second row will be Sergio Perez alongside Carlos Sainz. And in fifth place, Spaniard Fernando Alonso of Alpine. Mercedes, get the binoculars out, nowhere to be seen again.
Well. I mean, it could happen. To be fair, I think Alonso will do his utmost best to be in the top five at the Australian Grand Prix. I think he's got the car underneath him to be able to put it inside the top five. Ocon showed it us in Saudi Arabia, so Fernando Alonso, why not? We'll have to wait and see. But predictions ahead of the race, I've gone with Charles Leclerc winning his second race of the year, with Carlos Sainz in P2, rounding out a Ferrari 1-2 once again. I've gone with Verstappen in P3. I think he'll tail off a little bit towards the end, which will allow Carlos Sainz to overtake him. I've gone with Sergio Perez in P4, with obviously Red Bull taking third and fourth. And I've gone with Pierre Gasly in P5. I think Lewis Hamilton and the Mercedes will tail off. We'll have to get the binoculars out again and find where they are. But I think qualifying will be a better chance for Hamilton to get inside the top five, but the race will be harder because of the high speed nature of Albert Park this year. So, Harvey, finally, what are your predictions ahead of a race?
P1, Nicholas Latifi. No, I'm only joking. P1 will be Verstappen. Second place, Leclerc. Third place, Sainz. Fourth, Sergio Perez. And fifth, Fernando Alonso. I reckon Alonso is going to have an absolute worldie and defend off insert sixth place driver.
We don't know who the sixth place driver will be. We'll say Nicholas Latifi. We'll just say Nicholas Latifi. But with that being said, let's round off the episode talking a bit about the rookies, because we've obviously got, well, rookies in quotation marks. It's obviously Guan Yu Zhou this year as the rookie, but obviously there's Mick Schumacher and Yuki Tsunoda who have not raced Albert Park. But with that being said, no one's raced at the new track layout at Albert Park, so it's kind of tricky to say. But those three have never raced in Melbourne. Do you think it'll be a tricky task for the trio to kind of get up to speed? But with that being said, the Haas, the AlphaTauri, and the Alfa Romeo have looked pretty good this year.
I think everyone knows roughly where the track goes. Obviously, it has been resurfaced, so your bumps, traditional bumps, say there's a bump on the way into turn one. I don't know if there is. Obviously, the more experienced drivers will know that, but it's been resurfaced, so bumps have gone. But also, I think it's sort of a level playing field because nowadays everyone has a simulator. So pretty much everyone knows the track inside out.
Hopefully, it is a level playing field. Hopefully, it is a good race. Hopefully, we can get up early and enjoy a very, very good race at Albert Park.
The big question of the weekend, are you early morning in it? Are you getting up really, really early to watch it, or are you doing an all-nighter?
That is a good question.
Because MotoGP is in America, but it's in Texas. So if it was like East Coast, it'd be West Coast, it'd be fine. I could have just all-nighted it, but obviously, probably not.
That is a tough question. I think, well, it's 6 a.m. start, so I'd probably go to bed like early-ish, probably like 10, 11, and get my alarm ready and sorted for 5, 6 a.m. But Harvey, what are you going to do? What are your initial thoughts ahead of the early wake up or all-nighter type thing?
Well, if it was like 3 a.m. like Las Vegas is going to be, I think that would be a stay-upper. But 6 a.m.'s too late to do an all-nighter for, so I think I might get up early. And plus, it's West Brom away on Saturday. It's a huge game, and I will be absolutely shattered from that. So it'll probably be go to bed nice and early, get up, watch Verstappen win.
Well, hopefully it is a good race. But with that being said, thank you very much for obviously liking our content, following our Instagram, our Twitter, our TikTok, our YouTube. It's greatly appreciated. This will go out on the Thursday evening, the usual 6 p.m. BST time. Thank you to Harvey for joining me on this episode. Thank you, everybody, for listening, and goodbye.